Before we get started, we have a quick disclaimer to read. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
That's right. And today we are doing something a little different. We are turning the clock back. We're heading to the mid-60s, 1965, turning into 1966. And the world is changing. The counterculture is bubbling up. But we're zooming in on a very quiet, almost unassuming town in upstate New York called Elmira.
It's almost picturesque, right? You can picture the snow, the quiet streets, and inside one specific house, you have a couple, Jane Roberts and her husband, Rob Butts. They're artists, they're writers, they're generally creative types, but in their living room under bright lights, and that's important, no spooky seances here, something absolutely wild is happening.
It really is the classic late-night campfire scenario, except, instead of a fire, you have a tape recorder spinning.
Right.
And instead of a ghost story, you have a woman entering a profound trance state to speak for an entity that is definitely not her.
And this isn't just, I have a feeling kind of stuff. By the time we catch up with them in this specific deep dive, they are way, way past the Ouija board phase.
Oh yeah, the board is long gone.
Jane is stepping aside, psychologically speaking, and this personality, who calls himself Seth, is taking the floor.
And Seth gives us one of the most famous definitions of himself right around this time. He describes himself as an energy personality essence no longer focused in physical reality.
Which, let's be honest, is a mouthful. It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi novel.
It does, but that precision of language is so key here. He isn't saying I'm a ghost. He isn't saying I'm a demon or anything like that. He's defining himself by his focus. We are focused here in the physical. He is focused, well, elsewhere.
And look, I know what some of you listening might be thinking. Whether you are a diehard believer in channeling or you're a total skeptic who thinks this is all, subconscious creativity or some elaborate role-playing, you have to admit the material itself is fascinating, it's dense, it's funny, and it is weirdly, sometimes uncomfortably specific.
And that specificity is exactly what we are unpacking today. We are doing a deep dive into the early sessions, Book 5 of the Seth Material.
Okay, Book 5.
This covers sessions 199 through 239, and it's published by the New Awareness Network. And we should say, for anyone following the chronology of Jane and Rob, this book is a massive turning point.
It really feels like they're finally settling into the groove here, doesn't it? In the earlier books, there's so much, who are you? And is this real? And all that anxiety.
A lot of foundation laying.
Yeah. But by Book 5, they are down to business. We aren't just getting philosophy. We're getting tests. We're getting these mind-bending theories on the physics of time. And my absolute favorite part, which I know we're going to spend some time on.
I know where you're going with this.
We're getting interactions between a multidimensional spirit entity and a house cat.
The cat moments are surprisingly grounding. But you mentioned tests. I think that is the most crucial place to start because it frames everything else. Rob Jane's husband, he isn't just sitting there nodding along like a passive disciple.
Not at all.
He's taking notes furiously in his own shorthand, but he's also playing the role of the scientist, the researcher.
Oh, absolutely. Rob is the skeptic/researcher here. He loves his wife, he trusts her, but he also knows how crazy this all looks from the outside.
Of course.
He wants proof. He knows it's Jane's voice speaking, but he wants to verify that the information coming through isn't just something she read in a magazine or telepathically picked up from his own mind or, just guessed.
Right. He's trying to eliminate all the conventional explanations.
Exactly. So he sets up these envelope tests.
Right. And for those who haven't heard of these, the premise is deceptively simple. It really sounds like a parlor game. Rob takes an object, it could be a bill, a drawing, a letter, anything flat usually, and he seals it inside a double envelope.
A double envelope, so you really can't see through it.
He creates a double-blind scenario. He doesn't tell Jane what it is. Jane doesn't know. Sometimes even Rob forgets what he put in there. Then, during the session, Seth, speaking through Jane, has to describe what is inside, clairvoyantly.
And in Book 5, they ramp this up significantly. They go beyond just envelopes sitting on a table. They try to track people in real time. This is where we get the famous Gallagher experiment.
This runs through sessions 199 to 201. The Gallagher's Bill and Peggy are friends of the couple. They're going on a vacation to Puerto Rico. Now, we have to contextualize this.
Right, please do, because today, if I go to Puerto Rico, you can just track my location on your phone. See my Instagram stories?
Exactly. This is 1965. There is no Instagram. There is no Find My Friends. There is no texting. Long-distance calls were a big deal. They were expensive and rare, so they are totally cut off. They're in Puerto Rico, and Rob and Jane are sitting in the snow in Elmira, New York. And Seth says, essentially, okay, let's see what they're doing right now.
And the hits here are, well, they're startlingly specific. It's not the kind of vague horoscope stuff like icy water or they're having a good time.
Of course, they're having a good time. They're on vacation.
Right. Any fraud could guess that if someone is in Puerto Rico. But no, this is different.
No, these are mundane, almost boring details. That's what makes it so compelling. So Seth tunes in. He describes the environment. He says he sees a striped awning.
Okay, a striped awning. That's pretty specific.
He sees a blue blanket.
Now, let's fact check that one. Was it blue?
It turned out to be green and white. So a miss on the color, but he got the object right. But then he says he sees a purchase. He sees them buying a small sculpture.
Which turned out to be a bird sculpture.
Exactly, a bird sculpture. But here is the one that just, it blew my mind. The one that makes you stop and stare at the page for a minute. Seth says specifically they paid $3.75 for a dinner.
$3.75.
Not about $4, not a cheap dinner. $3.
And when the Gallaghers came back from Puerto Rico and Rob, grilled them and checked their records.
They had a dinner receipt for exactly $3.75.
That is the kind of detail that is so incredibly hard to explain away as coincidence. If you guess dinner, you're safe. Everyone eats dinner. But if you guess $3.75 in 1965, that is such a specific number. That's like guessing a license plate number.
It implies a level of perception that is zooming in on the digits written on a check. It's microscopic. And what I love is that Seth isn't just a remote viewing camera. He has personality while he's doing this.
Oh, for sure.
He has these nicknames for the Gallaghers.
Oh, the nicknames add this whole other layer of personality. It proves he's not just some, computer processing data. He calls Bill the Jesuits. Why?
Because Bill asks endless questions. He's always probing, always debating. Seth finds it amusing. And he calls Peggy the cat lover.
Which is just hilarious because, in reality, Peggy was actually afraid of cats, wasn't she?
She was terrified of them. But Seth loves that little bit of irony. It feels like he is teasing them. It's not this booming, I am the voice of God thing. It's like a witty uncle who happens to be able to see through walls and across oceans.
There's another instance later in the book, around session 215, I think, involving a trip to Washington, D.C. Peggy goes there for a poverty seminar, and Seth tunes in again.
Right. And he describes a banquet with long, narrow tables, which was correct. He describes a disturbance, which it turns out was a press conference that interrupted the flow of the event.
Wow.
But then there's the coaster incident.
Oh, the taxi cab thing. This is my favorite mundane hit. It's so good.
It's the best. Seth describes seeing a taxi cab symbol on a glass. Now, on the surface, that sounds completely random. Is she in a cab? Is she looking at a cab? But it turned out they were at a place or used a coaster from an establishment called the taxi cab.
See, that's what I mean. It is the specificity of the mundane. It is like if you were hallucinating a spirit guide, or if your subconscious was trying to trick your husband, would you invent a coaster from a bar called the taxi cab?
No.
Or would you invent, I don't know, a message about world peace or a vision of angels, something grand?
That's a great point. The data dumps in these sessions are so often focused on proving that perception isn't limited by distance. And it's verified by the small stuff. It's almost like Seth is saying, look, I can tell you the secrets of the universe, but first, let me tell you what your friend spent on spaghetti so you'll actually believe me.
It's establishing credentials. It's like a warm-up act.
Exactly. But then, once Seth feels he has established that, hey, I can see what's in your pocket, or I know what you eat for dinner, he pivots. He pivots hard to the heavy stuff.
The heavy stuff, the mind-bending stuff. Okay, we have to talk about time.
We do. This is really the core philosophical theme of Book 5. The tests are the appetizer, but the theory of time is the main course.
So lay it out for us. Most of us, practically everyone listening right now, thinks of time as a line. We're born, we move forward, we die. The past is behind us, the future is ahead, and we are just sliding along this track like a train car.
A to B to C.
Yeah. And Seth looks at that model and basically says, that is adorable, but completely wrong.
He calls it the spacious present.
The spacious present. That is a beautiful phrase. Unpack that for us. What does it actually mean?
Well, okay, imagine that everything that has ever happened and everything that ever will happen is actually happening right now, all at once, just in different dimensions or frequencies.
Okay, so it's all simultaneous.
Right. Seth argues that our ego, our conscious focus, is like a spotlight in a pitch black room. We shine it on one object, then we move it to the next, then the next. To us, it looks like a sequence. First the chair, then the table, then the door. But the chair, table, and door are all sitting there in the room together the entire time.
So the sequence is an illusion of our focus, not a property of reality itself. We're just looking at things one by one.
Precisely. The whole landscape is there in the dark. We just can't see it all at once because our neurological equipment isn't built for it. Our brains filter it into a linear story so we don't go insane.
There is this quote in the book that gave me chills. It's so simple, but it's so destructive to our normal way of thinking. Seth says, "The past does not vanish, for there was no path to vanish."
It's profound. Because if the past didn't go anywhere, it means it is still accessible. And not just as a memory, because we usually think of memory as like a dusty file in a cabinet, but as a living present reality.
This leads into his critique of J.B. Priestley and Dunn. Jane was reading these authors at the time, right? They were writing about these kinds of time theories in the 60s.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Jane was reading Priestley's Man in Time. And Seth uses that as a jumping off point. He isn't afraid to critique other thinkers. He says they're on the right track, but they don't go far enough. He introduces this concept of inverted time or spherical time.
Spherical time. Okay, help me visualize this. I'm trying to picture a clock, but I'm guessing that's completely wrong.
Forget the clock. Forget the line. Imagine a sphere. You're at the very center of it.
Okay.
We usually think of time expanding outward, like ripples in a pond getting further and further away from the center, from the now. But Seth says time also turns in on itself. It is an inverted system. It flows in all directions at once.
So the future isn't just flowing away from the past, it's all interconnected.
No, it's not a one-way street.
Right.
In this spherical model, the future can actually affect the past because it is all part of the same ball of energy. The implications of that are just staggering. It suggests that our past isn't a fixed block of concrete. It is fluid. It's more like water than stone.
He uses the house analogy to explain this, which I found really helpful and, I have to admit, a little spooky.
The childhood house, yeah, that's a great one.
Right. So you think of the house you grew up in. In your mind, that house is a solid object that existed in, say, 1955 or 1980. It has brick and mortar, it has a specific address. But Seth says no.
He says the house is a conglomeration of atoms and molecules. That is the physical side.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality of the house is created by the observer. It doesn't exist independently of you.
So when I remember that house, I am not just playing back a videotape. I'm not just accessing a read-only file from my brain.
No. You are essentially recreating the house in the present moment using psychic energy. You're building it again instantly. And here's the kicker. As you change in the present, the house in the past changes too.
That is the part that just breaks my brain. You're saying that if I'm happy today, the house I grew up in was a happier house. And if I'm miserable today, that house back in 1980 actually becomes gloomier. Not just my memory of it, but the thing itself.
In Seth's framework, yes, because there is no thing itself separate from perception. If the past doesn't vanish and it is living, then it is evolving. You are constantly rewriting your own history. Every single time you view the past, you alter it.
Wow. It puts a whole new spin on therapy, doesn't it? Healing the inner child isn't just a metaphor in this context. You might actually be changing the physics of your own past.
It connects directly back to the spacious present. If everything is happening at once, then a change in the now ripples out in all directions, forward into the future, which we accept, but also backward into the past. You are the center of the sphere, and your emotional state dictates the color of the entire sphere.
I need a second to recover from that one. It is a lot to take in. It removes the safety net of, well, that's over and done with. In this model, nothing is ever done with.
It is empowering, though, isn't it? It means you aren't a victim of your past because your past is still under construction by you right now.
That's a beautiful way to put it. But Seth doesn't just keep it abstract. He ties this into dreaming, too. Dreams are a huge part of the early sessions.
They are. And Rob, specifically, was having a really rough time with dreams in this period.
Yeah, looking at the notes, Rob was having these intense anxiety dreams. He kept dreaming about his family, his brother, Bill, his father. But there was this one recurring theme. A radio.
A radio he couldn't turn off.
Right. He dreams he gets a shock from a radio. He tries to shut it down, but he can't. It's buzzing, it's shocking him, it sounds terrifying, it sounds like a panic attack manifested as an object.
And Seth analyzes this. He doesn't say, oh, you ate bad cheese before bed. He says the radio represents the sessions, the channeling itself. Rob, subconsciously, is terrified that he has opened a door he can't close. He's afraid the psychic phenomena are going to overwhelm him.
Which is such a human reaction. Here you are, your wife is speaking in a different voice, telling you the nature of the universe. Of course you would be scared. You can't hit the off switch. It's like plugging yourself directly into a high voltage line.
But Seth's take on nightmares here is really interesting. He calls them therapeutic dreams.
Therapeutic. That is not a word I usually associate with waking up screaming.
Yeah.
Most people think a nightmare means something is wrong with them.
Seth argues the opposite. He says a scary dream is a safety valve. It allows you to discharge built-up fear and electromagnetic tension in the dream state, so you don't have to act it out in physical life.
So having the nightmare actually saves you from having a breakdown or a panic attack in the waking world.
Exactly. It burns off the excess energy.
Right.
He says Rob's shock in the dream was real. It was a literal release of psychic tension. By facing the fear in the dream, he neutralized it. The dream did the work so the waking man didn't have to.
That is actually really comforting. Next time I wake up in a cold sweat, I'll just say, thanks, brain, for discharging that electromagnetic tension for me.
It's a much healthier way to look at it. Instead of analyzing what is wrong with me, you realize your system is self-correcting. And speaking of Rob's family, Seth drops a bit of a bombshell regarding reincarnation in these sessions.
Oh, the fetus position dream.
Yes. Rob dreams he sees his younger brother, Bill, in a fetus position. Now, standard dream analysis might say this is about regression or vulnerability or something.
Sure.
Seth interprets this quite literally. He says this symbolizes that the brother will return. He will be reborn into another physical life.
But, and here's the twist, Seth says Rob and Jane will not.
Correct. Seth claims that Rob and Jane are in their last physical incarnation. They have done the rounds, they've learned the lessons, and after this life, they move on to, well, whatever comes next in non-physical reality.
Wow, that has to be a heavy thing to hear. This is it, guys, make it count. No do-overs for you.
It puts a certain pressure on their work, doesn't it? It frames the Seth Material not just as a hobby or a project, but as their final major contribution to the physical plane. It really raises the stakes.
Speaking of contributions, we have to talk about the third member of the team. We have Jane, the medium, Rob, the scribe, and then we have the one who contributes pure, unadulterated chaos. Willie the cat. This is my favorite dynamic in the entire book. You have this profound, multidimensional entity explaining the secrets of the universe, and then enter the cat.
It's session 227, I believe. Jane is in a deep trance. She's tasting, she's speaking as Seth. And Willie, their cat, decides this is the perfect time for a cuddle.
He jumps right into Jane's lap, and not just sitting there, he starts kneading, making biscuits on her legs, digging those little claws in.
Now, normally, Seth ignores physical distractions.
Yeah.
He can talk through traffic noise, neighbors yelling, sirens, whatever. But the kneading, that got to him.
I love the image. Seth stops mid-sentence, probably explaining the nature of the soul or spherical time, and just says, wait a minute.
He breaks character. It is so rare for him to do that. The trance is usually seamless.
It is so funny because it just grounds the whole thing. It reminds you that this entity is speaking through a biological body that has legs, and those legs hurt when a cat digs its claws in. It collapses the distance between the divine and the domestic in a second.
It also shows Seth's personality. He isn't a robot. He gets annoyed. He has a sense of humor about the absurdity of the situation. He doesn't, zap the cat with lightning. He just complains.
There is another moment where Rob has a sneezing fit right before a session. And he gets really angry about it. He's just sneezing, he's frustrated, his eyes are watering.
And Seth diagnoses the sneeze.
Only Seth would diagnose a sneeze as a metaphysical event, not allergies, not a cold.
He calls it a panic reaction. He says Rob was subconsciously terrified of the information that was about to come through in that session, and his body tried to stop it. Literally tried to sneeze the session away.
I can't take notes if I'm sneezing. It's the perfect subconscious delay tactic. It really highlights that this wasn't easy for them. Rob wasn't just a passive observer. He was fighting his own skepticism and fear the whole time. The body itself was rebelling against the expansion of consciousness.
And Seth calls him out on it, but usually with a lot of affection. He has this banter with them. He calls himself a talkative old friend.
And he teases the guests, too. There's John Bradley, a friend who witnessed some sessions. Seth calls him Philip, which is apparently his entity name. He teases him about leaving early. He teases Rob about his writing hand getting tired from taking all those notes in shorthand.
It creates that campfire vibe we talked about. It isn't a Sermon on the Mount. It's a conversation in the living room. It feels intimate, but then occasionally the living room gets weird.
Weirder than a talking trance medium with a cat on her lap.
Yes. We have to talk about the visuals. Rob, being an artist, is a very visual person. He processes the world through images, and in session 215, he has a genuinely terrifying experience.
The giant eyes. This sounds like a horror movie title.
It does. Rob is lying in bed. He isn't asleep, but he's in that drifting, hypnagogic state. And suddenly, he sees a pair of giant, golden, masculine eyes staring at him.
Inches from his face.
Inches away. He said he could see the eyelashes, the texture of the iris. It was hyper-real. It wasn't vague or dreamlike at all.
Now, I would have screamed and run out of the house. That sounds absolutely menacing. What did Seth say this was?
Seth explains that Rob was peering into another dimension. The entity he was encountering, possibly Seth himself or another guide, didn't necessarily have giant eyes. But Rob's physical senses couldn't process pure energy. They didn't have a vocabulary for non-physical essence.
So, what happened?
So his brain translated that energy into the closest thing it understood. Eyes. Watching. The feeling of being observed.
So, because he felt he was being watched, his brain projected eyes. It was a translation error.
Exactly. A hallucination, yes, but a hallucination triggered by a real encounter with a non-physical consciousness. It's a really important distinction Seth makes, that what we see is often a symbol for an energy we can't quite grasp.
That is deeply unsettling, but also fascinating. It makes you wonder what else we are translating incorrectly every day. And then there is the candle flame.
This was during a session. They had a candle burning on the table, and suddenly the flame shoots up. Rob estimates it went up to 7 inches high, and it stayed there.
7 inches is a torch, not a candle. That is physically impossible for a standard wick.
Right. And Seth claims responsibility. She says he manipulated the flame using excess energy from the session. But, and this is the fascinating caveat, he says he can only do it when Rob isn't looking for it.
Why? Is he shy? Is it performance anxiety from beyond the grave?
It's the observer effect again. Seth says that as soon as the ego gets involved, as soon as Rob thinks, look, a miracle, let me measure it, the focus shifts. The skepticism kicks in, the analysis kicks in, the rational mind tries to box it in, and the energy just dissipates.
So the miraculous can only happen when you aren't trying to pin it down and study it. That tracks with so much of this material. The harder you grasp, the more it slips away. It's like trying to see a faint star. You have to look slightly to the side of it to see it clearly.
It is consistent with his teachings on creativity, too. Speaking of which, we should definitely mention Jane's poetry.
Yes! Amidst all this channeling and philosophy, Jane suddenly becomes a poetry machine.
Seth predicts she will write a book of poetry. And shortly after, Jane writes something like 60-plus poems in just a few days.
That is insane output. That's a poem every hour, almost, if she was awake.
Seth says she was tapping into that same creative energy source. She wasn't channeling Seth for the poems, they were her poems, but she was using the channel she had opened up to access her own inner creativity more freely.
It really shows that this wasn't just about ghost stories or fortune-telling. It was about unlocking human potential. The side effect of the channeling was that Jane herself became more creative, more expansive.
Precisely. It was a partnership, not a possession, a creative collaboration.
So, looking back at Book 5, we have quite a mix. We have tests involving $3.75 dinners. We have time spheres where the future changes the past. We have therapeutic nightmares, cats interrupting sessions, and giant golden eyes floating in the bedroom.
It's a very dense collection of sessions. It is overwhelming if you try to take it all in at once, for sure.
What I love about Book 5 is that it feels so human. It's messy. They have doubts. They have speezing fits. They worry about money. They worry about their friends. But in the middle of all that normal life stuff, they are exploring the absolute edges of reality.
It grounds the metaphysical in the mundane. And I think that is why the Seth material has lasted so long. It doesn't ask you to leave your life. It asks you to look at your life differently. It asks you to see the magic in the $3.75 dinner receipt.
So here's a thought to leave you with, a little provocative nugget to chew on.
Go for it.
If Seth is right and the past does not vanish, and we are constantly recreating it with every memory, what happens if you consciously decide to change your past?
Oh, wow. That is a big question.
I don't mean lying about it. I don't mean denial. I mean, what if you viewed a trauma or a failure in your past and you consciously changed the emotional energy you send back to it? If Seth is right, could you actually change the you that exists back then? And if you did, would the you sitting here right now suddenly change too?
That is the ultimate question of the spacious present, isn't it? Are we the result of our past, or is our past the result of who we are right now?
I'm going to be thinking about that all week, probably while looking at my cat and wondering if he knows the secrets of the universe.
He probably does. And he is probably judging you for not knowing them?
He definitely is. Look, we have barely scratched the surface here. We tried to hit the highlights, but the early sessions, Book 5 is just packed with so much more detail. The nuance in Seth's arguments about time is something you really have to read to appreciate.
You really do have to read them to get the full nuance. We strongly encourage you to study the Seth Material books yourself. You can find them at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. That's sethcenter.com/the-early sessions.
Go check it out. Seriously, whether you buy the metaphysics or not, it is a fascinating document of human consciousness. And a huge thanks to New Awareness Network for keeping this material available for all of us.
And thanks to Seth and Jane and Rob for their courage.
And Willie the cat. Can't forget him.
And Willie. Definitely can't forget Willie.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.
Take care.